Hello and welcome to Conversations with Dr. Westman. Today is episode 14, and today we're going to be chatting about keto-friendly vegetables. How are you doing, Eric?
Great, Glenn. How are you?
Very, very good, thank you. So when discussing vegetables, we tend to believe that all of them are healthy, but there seems to be options that are both high and low in carbs. So what vegetables are high in carbs?
Well, I guess before we get to vegetables, there's this classic phrase that's used, fruit and vegetables. And I wish, and even researchers use that phrase, and fruits and vegetables are very different metabolically. And so I just want to make sure, we're not talking about fruits. I mean, that's another discussion. So when we talk about vegetables, there's the rule of thumb of if something grows beneath the ground, it's going to have more starch. So the paleo primal hunter-gatherer idea is that you don't want to eat starchy vegetables that grow below the ground. And that's a useful way to think about it. So, but then you have to know where the vegetables come from and how they're grown. So, things like potatoes are going to be the starchiest. And the problem with the one size fits all saying like that is something like corn, which doesn't grow below the ground, is actually very starchy too. So I look at the vegetables in a starchy, non-starchy kind of framework, and it's all a matter of how many carbs, total carbs, not net, total is more precise, how many are in that certain vegetable.
So you spoke, you've given a couple of examples of some high carb vegetables. Before we move on to the low carb vegetables, which I'll get to in a second, give us some more examples of high carb vegetables. We spoke about potatoes and corn. Give us some more examples of high carb vegetables that you would prefer people to stay away from.
Well, it's interesting. I have to speak in a language that a person understands. We don't get a lot of great nutrition training or teaching in our schools and even in medical school. And so don't forget that a potato is what a French fry is made out of. So I'll have someone who potato doesn't encompass everything made from a potato in that person's mind. And so, this is where the teaching, so nothing made from potatoes, even sweet potatoes. So there'll be a classic southern United States thing where, sweet potatoes are much more commonly consumed than regular potatoes. And they'll be surprised that, even sweet potatoes, and even it's kind of funny because sweet is in the name of sweet potatoes. So the language often is difficult, but it boils down to the number of carbs. So potatoes, corn, the other commonly consumed things, other things made from corn, like in the southern United States, things like grits, which is a commonly consumed vegetable for breakfast. Things that are, I rarely consume the really starchy vegetables anymore. I don't. I have to think of the grocery store and the areas that I don't go.
What about give us some good examples then of low carb vegetables?
Yeah. So the that's kind of funny. I in my teaching I focus on what you can have rather than what you can't have, thinking that it's just easier that way, simpler. So the list of non-starchy vegetables is actually pretty long. I mean, the most commonly consumed non-starchy vegetable these days in the US, I think, is cauliflower. And cauliflower and broccoli, asparagus, Brussels sprouts sort of are what I see in recipes that are being made that are keto friendly or low carb vegetables. But even then, you have to remember non-starchy or low carb vegetables have to be limited if you're going to be doing a keto level sort of diet. So what we do is we choose non-starchy vegetables and then limit the amount of those non-starchy vegetables for the day, although there's individual variability in how much you can have. So asparagus, broccoli, Brussels sprouts, cauliflower, cucumber, squash like zucchini. The list is actually pretty long. You know, as I go into the grocery store, it's the outside of the grocery store there, not the inner aisles in our grocery stores.
So you've spoken about the fact that you've got vegetables high in carbs, low in carbs, but the key component there is that they do all contain carbs, and that's why even the ones that are low in carbs are limited as well. So why is it that we are worried about the vegetables that are high in carbs?
Yeah, so the idea of a low carbohydrate diet is one that lowers the blood sugar level, keeps the blood sugar down, and lowers the insulin level. Insulin goes up in response to the blood sugar going up. So any starch or sugar that you consume, eat, or drink will be digested into glucose, or most of it will anyway, albeit not fructose, but you always get some glucose with fructose. You know, so you want to, the starchy vegetables will raise the blood glucose or blood sugar, and that will raise the insulin level, and that's the pathway toward gaining weight, you know, overweight and obesity, and the pathway toward diabetes.
So a lot of people have become super creative with a lot of these vegetables. Like you get cauliflower mash, and you get zucchini noodles, and you get pumpkin-based pizzas. Give us some other creative ideas, just off the top of your head, if you have any, with people that are creative with some of the, you know, the more common type of vegetables. Do you know anything?
Sure. Yeah, and you know, it's never been easier to do a low carb keto diet now if you're going to the store, and because of things like the cauliflower crust pizza, cauliflower mashed cauliflower. I even saw an advertisement for cauliflower hash browns that might be coming out by a major food company in the US. Cauliflower rice is another creative use of cauliflower that gives you the feel and not exactly the taste, but it's similar. I mean, if you put a lot of spices on the cauliflower rice, it gives you that kind of rice feel. You know, I can't not mention a chaffle, which is really the greatest thing since sliced bread, because that's a saying here. You know, it's greatest since sliced bread. You know, the simplest way is to use cheese and eggs, but you can add vegetables and bacon and all sorts of. There are even, you know, chaffle recipe books now, and if you've never heard of a chaffle, it's not what. So it's for cheese. So it's basically a cheese and egg waffle. They are pretty amazing, quick and easy kind of things to make. The other creative things, you know, the zoodle idea, the zucchini noodles. You can even buy them in the store now. You can, you know, pay someone else to make the zucchini noodles, or you can get a handheld or tabletop zucchini or noodle maker, where you run the vegetable through a spiralizer. I think it's called spiralizer. So all sorts of interesting things to do with vegetables, but you have to keep in mind that if you're doing a keto level, or if you're really sensitive to carbohydrates, you have to be mindful of the amount of even the non-starchy vegetables over the course of a day.
So that brings me to Renee's got a question here, and she says, I'm told that even low carb options should be limited. Why?
Yeah, well, that's it, right? So the even low carb, not zero carb. So that's where some confusion arises, because something like meat, which has zero carbs, like a hamburger, as long as they haven't added much sugar or a thickener to it, count that as zero carbs. You can have as much as you want because of the impact on the blood sugar, blood glucose. So that's really what we're trying to protect against. And so even the vegetables, non-starchy vegetables that almost have no carbs, actually the kind of rule of thumb to get onto our allowed food list is to be under 5 total carbs or so per cup of the vegetable. So, you know, our food list is just designed to make things simple, make things easy for people, so you don't have to be putting things in an app and counting everything so detailed. So, yeah, even the vegetables need to be limited.
We've got a question here from Ed, and he asks, do we need to eat vegetables at every meal?
Well, I don't think so. So, you know, we have this wonderful thing called a stomach. It's like a boiler pot or a pot on the stove where, you know, you eat something over the course of the day. It basically holds it. It's a holding place where you digest things, and then, of course, the intestines and all. But so we have a way to hold. I don't think you need to eat vegetables at every meal. In fact, I don't know that you need to have many meals a day as well. So that even advances the question further. Do you have to have 3 meals a day? And no, there's a lot of individual variability. So some people find they want, like, or need for how they feel to consume some food throughout the day. Others do fine with 1 meal a day, or called intermittent fasting, as long as you're not eating carbs and you're not hungry. I think so if you're down to 1 meal a day, I guess the answer would be, yeah, you want some vegetables at that meal. So, but yeah, that's the whole idea, that you need fruit or you need vegetables. Right? It's kind of being blown up by this new sub movement of low carb called the carnivore movement. You know, the case is made that you get all the nutrition you need as long as you're eating nose to tail. And, you know, they have an interesting point. I'm working on a special issue of a journal for current opinions in endocrinology and diabetes. And I'm just getting all of the articles together, and it'll be out hopefully soon. And Amber O'Hearn, who's a friend through the keto community, put together an essay of the science behind why eating a carnivore diet is actually healthy nutritionally. And, you know, it's an interesting argument. I would still like to see lots of people in studies for that, but they've really kind of wrestled with that question of, do you need to eat anything other than animal products? And I think it's an open question.
Our last question comes from Susan, and she asks, does it matter how the vegetables are cooked? Example, is it better to be steamed, grilled, pan-fried? Any ideas or suggestions if any particular way of being cooked is either better or worse, so to speak?
Yeah, I don't think so. Yeah, you know, here we're getting into the concept we're calling the sound modulator, the most important things, the lesser important things. And certainly you can find studies that show that you cook something different, there's a different amount of starch that, you know, it gets cooked down, or the resistant starches that don't break down. You know, I think those are like very small issues. So I don't think it matters whether you cook it a certain way or not. Just be mindful of the amount of carbs. Well, the other factor is that you're limiting the carbs so much that if there is variability in it, it's a small variability. So like if you're eating 200 grams of carbs a day, vegetables, and you have a 10% variation, you know, that's a big deal. But if you're only eating 5 or 10 grams of vegetables and you have 10% variation, that's a very small, negligible amount of difference if you cook it differently.
Before we go, Eric, I just want to elaborate on the sound modulator, because we're going to be referencing the sound modulator in many, many more episodes to come. Of course, it's part of your new book that's coming out in December, and we're very excited about it. And the sound modulator, if I could just expand on it, it's basically an idea that you have many different factors or facets in regard to overall health. So you would have sleep, quality of sleep, you'd have stress, you'd have the quality of the food, you would have exercise, you'd have all these different factors in terms of the sound modulator. And where do these play a role? You know, if you're going to turn certain dials up, when you're specifically talking to people with type 2 diabetes or hypertension or metabolic related illnesses, your idea that you've mentioned in the book is that the dial needs to be set all the way up onto diet and all the way down onto everything else. It doesn't mean that everything else is not important. It means that the most important thing for right now, for that person who's suffering from those illnesses, is to get the diet right. And when mentioning, for example, it doesn't matter if you steam or fry or grill the vegetables. When you spoke about the sound modulator there, what you are meaning is it doesn't really make a difference, correct?
Or it's a very small amount, yeah.
Small amount of difference. Okay, so we're going to be referencing the sound modulator in many more episodes to come. And I wanted to thank you again for always giving us valuable information and valuable content that we can, give to our listeners. And for you guys, if you enjoyed this video and you would like to see future videos, you can find us on our YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter account under the name of Adapt Your Life. And if you are watching us on our YouTube channel, please don't forget to click on the notification bell to be alerted every time we post new videos, which is every Wednesday. On behalf of Dr. Westman and myself, this is us signing out.